Howdy, it's tubalcain again, and this is episode number 42B, the answer of my What Is It series. Go back and watch 42A, the question, if you haven't seen it. Remember, there are 5 items, and the answer to the first part here, these chisels, there's 3 of them. These are cape chisels. Whether or not they make them anymore, it's really archaic. It's not something that I really have ever used myself. Probably you haven't either. They come in many different sizes. Let's take a look at a possible application. In some of the old books, this is rather preposterous, but think 100 years back before people had milling machines and someone may be desperate to make a keyway, and that would be a possibility, but boy, it would be rougher than a cob, even by a skilled craftsman. And I suppose then clean it up, dress it up with a file, but that's one of the purposes of a cape chisel. All of my old General Metals textbooks that I used to use at the school had pictures of how to use these. Stanley had those big beautiful charts that the teachers in the shop classes would hang up on the walls that would show different uses of chisels and just all of the hand tools, but that's all a thing of the past. The next item is these little files, and they are used for sharpening auger bits. Well, no one uses auger bits. You probably can't buy these, but there's still a million of them still around in toolboxes. If you look through a machinist's or a craftsman's drawers, whether it be a toolbox or whatever, you're going to find a lot of small miscellaneous tools, and more than likely in there you're going to find one of these, and it hasn't been used, at least not for sharpening auger bits, in a long, long time, if ever. Most of them are in perfect shape because they've never been used. This is a more modern auger bit and only has one lip on it. It's actually power driven. But these would get dull, especially the old ones, because they weren't that good of tools. So they weren't high-speed steel, so they would rapidly dull. And every carpenter, this was really a carpenter's tool, would use the file to sharpen that. And on one end we have safe edges. The other end, the flat side, is safe, and that is the cutting edge. When it doesn't have teeth, it's said to be safe. Well, I shouldn't have even included this in this, but I just had so many of these I had to put them to use. And then these really need to be thrown away. They were temporary tools anyway. You recognize that name. Schlage locks, a big name in household door locks. So that was a tool for either installing it or adjusting the locks. I'm not even exactly sure. And I must confess to having given you a lot of useless information so far. Okay, here's the answer for this item given to me or loaned to me by Rick. And let me take the tape off, and you can see that it's marked, boy, what a reflection I've got here, center locator, and the company's name is Master Specialty. I believe it's Minneapolis, etched on there, a little bit hard to tell. Now, first of all, let me show you another tool. This would have been totally displaced by CNC machines and digital readout and all of that, so it just doesn't serve any purpose at all. But you have seen me, I'm backing up here, use this in a video, and this isn't something I use very often either, but this is a Skidmore optical center punch. In some ways this is the same thing, and if we had a workpiece that had been very accurately laid out with a height gauge, and I have 4 intersecting holes here. With this particular item, what we do, and this is a magnet, can be put onto the work. That's the center punch, and this is the eyepiece. Now you're not going to see it here, but you can move this around, and there's crosshairs in there, and when you get it exactly on the intersection of the lines, you would pull the magnifier optical out, and you would put the little center punch which is also hardened. Of course, I haven't located it. Tap it with your brass hammer, and you would have located it. Of course, I made no real attempt to locate it, but that's essentially what this item does. Let me go through that real quickly. I did some research, and in the Popular Mechanics, October 1945, on page 81, I found this little description here. Well, it wasn't really an advertisement, it was a feature, but do you find that this is coincidental or ironic or timely that they called it a bomb site, and that was just a month or two after they dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and used the Norden bomb site. But there it is set up with a couple little clamps onto the work, and they got to set up on parallels. You can see it's extremely awkward to try to hold something like that. And on the second page here, they'll show you that there is a little magnifier with crosshairs, and they have located that, very similar to the Skidmore. Then when you've located it, you would put the drill bit in there, and that's why there's so many different size bushings, and you would drill. You don't center punch, you go right in with the drill, and there's a little description. Pause your video if you're in the mood and you can read that. You know, it's come to my attention that about 1/3 of everyone watches my videos, and probably everyone else's videos, on their phone or other small device. I bet it's extremely hard to read. Now let's go back and look at the actual item. You know, I'm convinced this was a marketing failure. They probably sold 10 of them. Probably made up a batch of 100 and sold 10 of them, and the inventor committed suicide in despair. Did you ever have a good idea and think you were going to get rich, and you can't even sleep at night, you know, because the idea is so great? I certainly did with Peterson Products. I thought that I would be a multimillionaire and was heartbroken when it was an abject failure. Well, so was this guy, I'm sure. Well, I've got this clamped onto the work. Can you see how awkward this is? Now, how would you set that up on the drill press? Well, you had to use parallels and, you know, come on. So the magnifier would have gone in there with the crosshairs. You would have located it to the best of your knowledge, and they say within 1,000th. And then in the box here, there's, what, about 10 different hardened drill bushings. And let's just say that I wanted to drill and tap these holes 1/4 Well, there's the 13/64. And I would put it in there, and I would tighten it down and take it over to the drill press, being very careful that this didn't slip, because, you know, a clamp doesn't bite into a piece of hardened steel very well. And then I would proceed to drill this and then move it over to the other ones. Very, very slow going, I would believe, but that is the purpose. I spent way too much time on this, but I thought that it was not a good idea, but it was. And even this, I've really only used it a couple times, mainly in demonstrations rather than actual use, because my digital readout has, you know, replaced this. All right. Did you like that? And then last, but certainly not least, is this item. And this is a Greenleaf number, what is it, 1611 conduit bender, but not just for making 90 degree bends. It's used for making an offset or a dog leg. So in other words, it just makes this little bend that you see right here. This is kind of an expensive tool. They made it in 2 sizes. This is for 3/4 EMT. Then they also made one for the 1/2-inch conduit. So let me demonstrate this real quickly, and I have mounted it on a board. It's got to be on something firm, and there's a handle here, and it's already bent. It takes quite a bit of effort to make this bend, and this is all that's to it. And why would you want to do that? Well, this is the wrong size conduit for this box, but anyway, the offset here is just right. If that's mounted on the wall, you got your clamp here, and that brings you up to the center height of the box. They also sell a fitting that will give you that offset, but that's, in our store, is a $3 fitting. So, it's a Greenleaf conduit bender. Well, that concludes this video. Hope you enjoyed it. This is tubalcain saying so long for now, and I'll see you in my next video.